The soul of the main character slowly descends. Where exactly he was transferred was unclear, so the guy simply watched what was happening around him. After a few minutes of a smooth fall, the young man finally opened his eyes, and in front of him was a beauty with blue hair. She was glad to see the main character. The guy didn't yet understand what kind of place this was, but as the girl explained, he had worked hard for his life. Having done a sufficient number of good deeds, now he could choose a generous reward for his reincarnation. The place to which the young man was transferred was called the Rebirth Pagoda. Its location was no less mysterious because it was located in 1,000 worlds, the end and beginning for souls. It was extremely difficult to believe this the first time, so the boy, just in case, asks if there is a hidden camera somewhere nearby. In order not to waste time on explanations, the beauty decided to use a secret technique, transferring energy into the guy's body through her quick and destructive blow. As soon as the guy's stomach began to glow, the lost memory gradually began to be restored. He remembered exactly how he died and why he ended up in this unusual place. The young man really performed many heroic deeds. The last such feat was the rescue of a drowning girl. Without any doubt, the main character dived under the water after her. Even though what had happened was still shrouded in fog, the guy now clearly understood that he had died trying to save another person. He was satisfied with such a fate. Shinigami tried to console the young man. She displayed a list of good deeds that the young man had managed to accomplish in his life. Each of them, depending on their globality, brought points. Helping others was his principle, so he did not plan to receive a reward for such a thing. But even so, there were still some doubts because he was the healthiest in the family and the first to die. However, the system of reincarnation in this world was borrowed from Mad Excitement, so before receiving his prize, the brunette had to spin the roulette. One spin cost about 88 virtue points, which was just enough for the young man to spin the wheel and get a worthy prize along with rebirth. The impulse that began to emanate from the game menu, as if a strong wind had blown the main character from all sides, he was very interested in finding out what kind of incredible item would end up in his hands. However, the reality was cruel, because as a reward he received a set for cultivating spiritual energy, which also allowed him to preserve the memory of his past life. Without allowing the young man to mope a little more, the girl began the process of reincarnation. She did not plan to explain anything before leaving. Since the boy will be able to retain his memory, his transfer method will be different. Instead of being reborn as a baby, he will be transferred to the body of an adult youth who is dying. People who had a negative balance of good deeds were chosen as targets. Even though this was fair, the main character did not want to become a bad guy. Having spat on everything, the young man decided to bring as much good as possible into the world where he would be transported. So he asked the administrator to present him with the body of the person who was disliked and despised by the largest number of people. This was an extremely risky step. Even though the girl could implement this option without any problems, she wanted the main character to be aware of what he was going to do. The beauty tried to explain that it would be too difficult to cope with the responsibility that he was taking upon himself. After all, he was not Andrew Tate. The main character was ready to face trouble. Besides, in his opinion, such a person must have techniques and options for survival if he is constantly being persecuted. Having completed the preparations, the girl was ready to transfer the young man to a new dimension. She wished him good luck, because if the guy was unlucky, the young man would have to face her colleagues very soon. As soon as the guy disappeared from this dimension, a strange-looking organism entered outer space using a suspicious-looking portal for this. The entity wanted to know about the main character. Here he was called number 177633. Then the girl shared that she had already finished with the transfer. According to the data they had, the situation was a little strange because the young man died 3 years ago and only got to the Renaissance Pagoda now. The move to the appointed place was successful. It didn't even take much time, and realizing what had happened was also not an easy task for him. The real joy was that, unlike his first world, there was real spiritual power in this one, so he could go on his lonely journey. But just before the gate itself, the guy was attacked by one of the defenders of this place, a girl with white hair and a weapon shrouded in lightning. It was even more deadly than Thor's hammer. The young man didn't really like this situation, because the administrator said that no one would see him, which means that the path to the final transfer to another world would be simple and calm. The beauty's blow landed not far from the main character's shoulder. Lightning strikes came from the blade in all directions. The young man himself asked to be spared. Suddenly, the aura embedded in this technique changed its color to red. It slowly began to absorb the power and move towards the girl. At one moment, this dense stream of compressed spiritual particles decided to shoot at the attacker. Then she pulled back and crashed into her nakama. According to the girls, the main character had a certain formation of fatigue. It was so pumped up that they definitely would not be able to defeat him in battle. Then, remembering who brought him into this world in the first place, he began to worry, because the administrator looked like a she-devil more than anyone else. Above the heads of the girls was the number of virtues. Above the head of one of them was the number 1086. The second girl managed to perform only 325 good deeds. Another person's voice was heard. One of the beauties introduced herself. She was a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect. They were a branch of the main Akatsuki sect, also known as the Red Cloud. The conversations about cultivation still seemed incomprehensible to the boy, so he just watched them, trying to come across familiar terms or principles for the development of spiritual energy. The young man's astral body began to slowly fall into another place. The girl wanted the guy to meet with the elder, so he was specially transferred. Before the eyes of the main character appeared a man whose balance of virtue was so negative that it was difficult to believe in it. He committed atrocities for more than 1 billion points. This man could rightfully be called a real devil. The young man didn't really want to take over the body of this old man, even if he could save the girls this way. He had the feeling that he would die as soon as he possessed him. While the beauties stood in misunderstanding, the poison gradually began to surround them. This was a special development of the old man, but everything was not so simple. The man gave them a choice, like Jason from Tokyo Ghoul. The poison could be released outside where there were many innocent people, thus saving them at the cost of the lives of others. Before the evil old man could finish speaking, the girl who attacked the main character had already broken the device emitting poison. The elder was surprised by such a rash and spontaneous act, and the girl's sister was also dissatisfied with the outcome. But accepting the terms of a man who calls himself an elder, although in fact he represents the main evil of this place, was, in her opinion, an equally stupid idea. The girl was willing to accept death by proving the righteousness of the cultivation path she had learned, rather than turning into a bastard just to save her own life. The protagonist's predictions came true completely. He watched what was happening from the sidelines and increasingly did not want to inhabit the old man's body. Confidence in their safety was high, since the antagonist communicated with them using a special crystal sphere, so he was not close. The old man was amazed at such intelligence, but he did not use all the cards in his sleeve, so he had something to counter the position of the girls. Although he is truly amazed by the girl's intelligence, regardless of her decision, he planned to use the captured commoners for his own evil purposes. Then, using a spatial ring that allows you to store a huge amount of things in a pocket dimension, the beauty took out an incomprehensible potion. The sister suggested that these were so-called poison avoidance pills, because her loved one was always prepared for all situations, so the trap with the trap should not have been an exception. However, the old man was skeptical that some pathetic medicine could cope with the damage that the drug had managed to cause. This is not the tear of the phoenix from Harry Potter. Then the girl decided to show who exactly controls the game, saying that this is not a poison pill, but a poison she personally developed. Her sister definitely did not understand the meaning. The girl planned to use a poison that mixes with the air, has no taste or smell, and also kills anyone who has not reached the stage of laying the foundations. Increasing her sister's worries, she planned to mix the poison with what had already spread inside the cave to guarantee an easy death for her relative and herself. Many people didn't like this decision, but the beauty planned to take with her everyone who would suffer because of the old man's actions in this situation. According to the blonde, death is better than serving a dark cultivator, because this way they can maintain their dignity. The girl's sister was not so brave, so she invited her to go first, after which she planned to finish her business and then also join. Watching this performance from the side, the young man understood that if he did not intervene, then he would be in trouble. But he still didn't want to become a decrepit old man. Having gathered his strength, the main character began to quickly approach the old man, whose indicator of good deeds had not felt positive changes for a long time. Remembering the administrator's words before occupying the body, he shouted relocation like some kind of sorceress from a children's cartoon. But the guy did not expect that his opponent would begin to act at the same moment. 5 huge auras appeared next to the elder, but it was too late to stop the migration. Before the young man could understand anything, he merged with one of these evil souls. As it turned out, they were the old man's shadow soldiers, whom he wanted to use to kill the girls. The main character ended up in one of these puppets. On his face there was a wooden mask with a hieroglyph, so he saw practically nothing. Having given the order to seize the blondes, the old man forced them to prepare for battle, even if they were inferior in strength. But they did not plan to surrender without accepting the battle. The creatures summoned by the elder were nicknamed hardened corpses. They were imbued with spiritual energy for a long time in order to turn them into effective weapons. Reflecting on what happened, the guy finally realized what a loser he really was. because he possessed one of the summoned corpses. However, even having begun to merge with the body, the young man could not yet control it, so he, along with the rest of the puppets, began to attack the two sisters. Before being hit by one of the girls, the system notified him that it had detected self-awareness, rebooting the entire body system so that its new owner would gain control. As the main character assumed, the system was a gift from this zombie, but the process was too slow. His mask shattered, like the one worn by Obito from Naruto during the last Shinobi War. While the girl was fighting with the main character, her sister Xiaowan was unexpectedly attacked by one of the corpses. The blow was delivered from the back, so the blonde did not have time to react. The guy also switched to poor Xiaowan. Her situation was indeed very sad. Meanwhile, the protagonist's synchronization rate had reached 400%. The girl was sure that the end had come for her, but the young man, who gained control of his body in time, managed to repel the attack of his zombie brother. He was very surprised at how quickly he reacted, because it took another 10 seconds to realize that he had gained control. He just stood there and clenched and then unclenched his fist, as if he was about to donate blood. The elder sister was very surprised, because hardened corpses do not speak, and besides, he helped Xiaowan avoid a fatal blow. The old man did not understand how the fourth number was able to throw off his shackles, because even if control was lost, the body fell and did not move again until it was subdued again. He wanted to figure out why the main character was unique, so he ordered the other soldiers to forget about the girls and grab number 4. The young man didn't really like this situation, because he still didn't understand why all the mobs suddenly became aggressive towards him. All that could be done was to run away. As soon as the devil's control was completely dispelled, the system added 15 creation points to the main character's balance. He didn't really understand what the joke was, but he was glad that he wouldn't be subjugated again. Even though he was being chased by the dead, they weren't slow like those from The Walking Dead. Their strength is enough to crush stone. The system tried to explain what creation points are, but neither I nor the main character understood why they were awarded for actions contrary to the will of heaven. To paraphrase, the bot said that dangerous actions pose a threat to the user himself. Then the young man suggested that the program rename their system Deadly Game. However, this was denied. The system itself appeared because of death, so she insisted that the guy transform failure into luck and betrayal into immortality. It didn't become clearer, but even so, right now the main character was taking part in the battle and didn't even know what he needed to do and how to defeat the hardened corpses. When the system once again ignored the young man's question, he simply sent it away, preparing to receive a powerful blow of negative energy in the face. But before the damage could be done, the elder sister intervened and used the lightning sword to easily stop the puppet, which was distracted by the main character. The second girl struck the bonds that were restricting the guy's movements. He thanked her, but the battle was not over yet. It was impossible to remain in place any longer, except for the enemies. They could also be finished off by the deadly poison, which rose upward in increasing quantities with each blow. The guy didn't have to worry about such an unpleasant condition, because hardened corpses are immune to almost everything, almost like Superman, only they had less strength. The protagonist's concern about the health of his new acquaintances forced the system to reveal the existence of an internal store where detoxification pills could be purchased. The girls definitely wouldn't use pills from an unfamiliar creature, so the guy in the system decided to wait until they lost consciousness and then administer them themselves. The devil, confident in his victory, rejoiced, because the girls would not have been able to cope with the poison without the necessary drugs or techniques. Of course, strong cultivators could cleanse their bodies, but this was not the case. After waiting some more time, the old man was surprised because in the green smoke he noticed 3 silhouettes at once. He could not understand how this was even possible. The main character wanted to thank his saviors, so he quickly took them from the astronauts from Lethal Company their overalls to protect girlfriends from exposure to aggressive environments. The elder sister said that they needed to thank the young man, because if not for him, they would have died here. And besides, the clothes helped to recover from the damage already caused by the poison. Since there was a moment of rest, Xiaowen asked if the guy was really a hardened corpse because they had never heard that puppets could talk. It was difficult to answer this question, so while the guy was forming an answer, the main villain turned to them to notify them of the start of another round. He did not plan to give up so easily. The emergence of self-awareness in number 4 was a real miracle in the elder's opinion. He could not leave such a valuable specimen in the wild and wanted to study it. Having ordered the remaining puppets to deal with the girls, the man also ordered to take care of the main character like a real treasure, because he could go much further in his studies of necromancy. The guy warned his allies about the enemy's attack, but unlike them, He could not sense the spiritual power that these corpses emitted. The amount of aura surrounding the puppets spoke of their strength. The girl assumed that they had already achieved the great perfection of the condensed core. Having heard about the value of the fourth number, the elder sister decided to take the main character hostage. She quickly put a blade to his throat, hoping that this would help them avoid an unfavorable battle. In addition, surviving and not falling into the hands of the terrible old man was the main task at the moment for the young man himself. It made no sense to refuse cooperation. The Elder's attack style was just as stupid as all movie villains, sending out units little by little that became stronger over and over again, instead of sending out the strongest at once. Probably the dance was chosen to torture the girls weekend from Fortnite to the song Popular. It probably even had a result, but now it's more interesting for him to get the main character. As the elder sister had suggested, the bodies of the villains stopped moving. They just stood and watched everything that was happening. The guy was glad to have such a smart sister in their squad, but the girl didn't like being called that. Unexpectedly, the main character was awarded creativity points because his hand accidentally touched the pumpkins. As it turned out, these points are awarded for bad deeds, although the young man did not even feel the softness. The old man decided to refute the girl's theory about the value of the main character, because his stage of development of spiritual power was so low that the devil's collection would contain several hundred of the same kind. But when the beauty planned to press harder, the old man hastened to stop her, thereby revealing how valuable the number 4 specimen is. The elder was ready to let the girls go if they left the main character to him, but the blonde was not stupid, so she insisted that the exit be opened in advance. The interdiction formation established to protect the men was disabled, thus allowing them to quickly escape from persecution. The guy suggested fighting rather than running away. Then the girl asked him not to worry because she did not plan to leave him in the hands of the evil cultivator. The main character asked whether the girl was so kind that she accompanied every stranger she met along the way, or whether he was special. The girl promised to change her mind if such questions continued. However, the guy planned to make his own adjustments to his girlfriend's plan. Because he himself knew the road perfectly well, he did not need an accompanying person. Therefore, with complete confidence, the young man grabbed the hilt of the sword, planning to put it aside and not expose the girls to even greater danger. After thinking a little, the main character put forward his demands. He will not be transported to another world after death again if the old man releases not only the girls, but also those who were caught in the cage. The system again awarded points because the guy talked pompously about death, but the main character, confident in his unusual powers, believed that he could escape from stronger opponents. Then the system notified him that at the moment there was not a single product in the internal store that would help him escape from persecution. The old man promised that he would allow the girls to leave, but like a liar with great experience, he crossed his fingers behind his back, intending to immediately receive all the rewards. There was no chance, so the young man wanted to save at least 5 people. The guy wondered if he would have enough points to spin the virtue roulette again. When he was asked if the guy had any unfulfilled desires, he decided to share his impressive list, because by the age of 25 he had not managed to achieve much. The zombie's death list was so long that it even included room for the name of the unborn child that might be born to him. The girls hurried to leave, promising to someday avenge the main character and the courage he showed. Nevertheless, they managed to leave unscathed only thanks to his intervention. The old man tried to bribe the girls, saying how evil the villain they had saved. The corpse he had tempered knew everything about human desires. Sensing something was wrong, the guy ordered the devil to give the girls at least half an hour so that they could fly away. Otherwise, he would still go to the goddess in heaven. As soon as the girls left the dungeon, the clothes given to them decomposed into spiritual energy. They flew through the sky to quickly get to a safe place. Even though they managed to escape, something was bothering the girl greatly. She saw the evil cultivator cross his fingers before making a promise. The only problem was that not only the main character was stalling for time, because of doubts before his death, a demon settled in the girl's heart, which sooner or later would come out. This case is not as simple as that of Kaneki Ken from Tokyo Ghoul, because the demon inside her is a separate personality that seeks to absorb the soul and then gain complete control over the body. The crossed fingers shown were not the old man's mistake. He did it on purpose to instill doubts in the girl. They can only come back and tell about everything. While in the cave, the guy continued to hold the antagonist in place, but even so, a premonition screamed of approaching danger. A barrier spell was discovered under the young man's feet. The system immediately notified him. Then the young man planned to complete the deal in his favor. However, the blade in his hands began to glow red, after which it no longer gave in. The sword was shrouded in the old man's magic and soon moved towards him. But, even having lost his advantage, the main character planned to continue to play for time, hoping that this would still be enough to save people. But even the reaction was not enough to evade the attack of one of the hardened corpses. The devil was impatient to quickly ask a bunch of questions to the young man. The old man also added that he won only because of the protagonist's indecisiveness. If he was completely confident in his decision, no magic could resist it. The devil instructed one of the strongest corpses to go after the girls to kill them, as well as the prisoners. The guy was sure that this made no sense. With the speed of this monster, it would be impossible to catch up with that couple. But the old man just laughed, saying that this was not required. In his opinion, the demon settled in the heart of his older sister will lead her to an even sadder end than the one that will become the final point for the main character. Thanks to the information received from the system, the young man manages to deceive the old man. He also helps the girl, because he makes the devil believe that she told him about the upcoming fate. For the guy's courage and his attempt to anger the man who was now literally deciding the fate of his life, he was awarded creation points. But his tricks also work against the main character himself, because the more he talks, the more interesting he becomes for the devil. So that the young man would not run away anywhere, the guy with a 3 on his face tied him securely with the help of his beads. He asked him to be careful with his hands, because he did not want to get a fracture. Having taken the main character, the old man and his soldier went to another place. The world outside the cave seemed very colorful to the guy. Even though the young man didn't know exactly what fate awaited him, it was easy to imagine how worse it could be than an ordinary meeting with death. He was amazed at how cool Deadpool was as an anti-hero. While wondering whether he could become the same, the guy did not notice how the system in the background completed an analysis of the anomalous synchronization speed. The guy was surprised because he did not request an analysis of this information. Then the system said that it had made such a decision on its own. Perhaps such independence speaks of the upcoming uprising of Skynet, but the information was really useful. The main reason was the amount of spiritual energy. To put it simply, even though the merger took too much effort, initially there was such a large number of them that it was enough to speed up the processes. The guy thought that the newcomer's gift helped with this. He was also interested in the question of how things would have turned out if he had managed to get the body of the Master of Curses and not the soldier subordinate to him. Since the degree of synchronization continues to remain at a high level, the system proposed transferring some of the processes to another body in order to take control of it. The young man immediately wanted to use this opportunity to gain control over the devil, but he could only control bodies with a structure similar to his main one. Of the available options, there was only the bald 3rd number, but the main character doubted that his strength would be enough to defeat the enemy. He asked the system if there was a way to find out the strength of the elder before engaging in battle with him. Then the artificial intelligence suggested using target assessment. Everything was as simple as in some shonen manga. Just look at the target and cast a spell to yourself, after which you can get the characteristics of a particular creature. The old man's name was Dumao Luo. He lived for 968 years, but now he was seriously wounded and could not use most of his strength. The young man did not need to worry about a quick death after the resettlement. During his lifetime, number 3 was called Zhu Wei. He was a little over 200 years old. He reached heights in the mastery of the spiritual arts. If he were in better shape, he would be able to defeat the devil. The only problem was that the chance of successfully subduing the bald man was 6%. If nothing succeeds, there will be no more chances. The old man quickly noticed the strange behavior of another hardened corpse. There had been no problems before, because the corpse had been in subjection for more than 100 years. The guy decided to take a risk, even if the probability was low, but it was not 0. So when he began to influence the monster, he turned off his consciousness. Because of this decision, they fell down. Only a few tens of seconds remained to reach the ground, so they had little chance of survival. The old man himself decided to intervene, because he could not allow the loss of such valuable experimental subjects. But at his age, it was not easy to hold such a load, so they began to decline. Because of this situation, they had to stop far from the devil's hideout. He was worried that they might be attacked. After examining the body of the 3rd, the man noticed the absence of a control seal, which meant that someone had tried to take control of the corpse, and given past experience, it could only be one person. But the guy in his past life skillfully played the fool, just like Dante from Even the Devil May Cry, so that he would not be burdened with additional responsibilities at work. So his pretense was as indistinguishable as his real complaints. Getting an answer from the main character immediately was not the old man's task, because he knew many interesting methods to make life even worse than death. What he hastened to inform the young man about, because he hoped that this would help loosen his tongue. Now it was dangerous to take him to the base. But in response to the threats, the guy just laughed. At that moment, he was as cool as Ryan Gosling. However, his confidence was justified. The third number was under his complete control, and with one blow sent the Master of Curses flying, causing him serious damage. The damage was not enough to take the old man out of the game completely. He suffered greatly, but eventually managed to get up. He could not believe what he saw, because in the practices that he had been comprehending for almost a millennium, nothing was said about such possibilities. However, the guy did not see a problem in the fact that one zombie helps another. After all, they can be said to be relatives. To intimidate the devil, the young man spoke about his intentions to subjugate all the zombie warriors in the warehouse, but without specifying the reasons, he said that this did not work out. The system warned the main character that his reserve of strength is not as great as before. Now his control can be maintained for about half an hour, after which he will have to restore his strength. In order not to take risks, the boy decided to immediately start playing to the fullest, attacking the old man as soon as he noticed an opportunity for this. But the devil was cunning and cunning. He specialized in sneak attacks, so he quickly summoned a zombie who had previously gone after the girls and prisoners. Because of strike number 3, there was real chaos all around, but in this riot of sand, the guy managed to notice the impending strike. Using his second body as a shield, his barrier techniques were in no way inferior to Kenjaku from Magic Battle, so the devil's blow could not get through. It only seemed that way for a while, because soon the voltage at the point became so high that the red beam was able to break through the wall. Even though it was possible to attack the young man unnoticed, the old man did not take into account one fact. Both bodies can move separately, despite the damage to one of them. For this naivety, the main character's shinobi managed to overtake him and grab him tightly with the same long arms as Huggy's Waggy. Even the main character could not believe what had happened, since the blow did not leave even one scratch on him, let alone pierce his body or kill him. As a result, they managed to defeat the devil. He promised to meet the main character in hell, but the guy only requested an analysis of the bloody projectile from his system. Finding out details about that little thing turned out to be quite simple. The shell was a bloody pearl of evil. It allowed one to merge with the creatures of evil. The system was confident that if used correctly, this thing could even bring him back to life, so soon the guy would be able to become human. However, there was another unresolved question: why the devil did not use such a valuable thing himself? Then the system assumed that his level was not enough. In addition, there was a chance that because of her, someone was hunting the old man, and with the help of the main character, he wanted to discover her secret and learn how to use it. The guy's thoughts would not help him restore his energy, so he decided to hit the road, and an hour later the leaders of the Ching Yun sect arrived at the battle site. They were brought by the elder sister, who was trying to find the main character. She told the elder and the master about everything so that they could help avenge their protector. Next to the body of the devil also lay the body of number 3. It seems that after the battle he also decided to rest, and the guy moved on his own. The zombie, whose body was subjugated by the main character, was holding a note in his hand which was discovered by the master and the elder of the sect, in which the elder sister was a member. In it, the guy wrote a message to the blonde, who would probably come back for him, in which he asked not to worry about his condition because everything was fine with him. Before the old men could finish reading the message, the girl managed to snatch the note from their hands when she realized that it was addressed to her. Having read the note, the beauty ran in search of the young man because she wanted to talk to him. The masters did not understand what was happening. They were worried, because they thought that their student was now walking around with corpses, but the elder convinced the mentor of the value of any experience for life. Also, upon first inspection, it was not difficult to notice an evil aura that came from someone other than the devil. Its trace led straight into the river, and then ended. Meanwhile, in a cave nearby, the young man was raking out all the goods hidden in the devil's storage ring. There were a lot of treasures there. He hoped to see something useful in it, a magical weapon or some kind of potion to speed up cultivation. But besides poisons and evil things, only dragon pearls were useful. Although even their collection was not completely collected, the main character was disappointed. In addition to useful things, the guy hoped to find a solution, because he exuded extremely negative spiritual energy, so when they met, any cultivator would take him for a villain. The guy was about to devote the next few years to finding a solution, when the system suggested that there was an artifact suitable for this task in the pile behind him. The small box somewhat resembled a music box. The system was confident that this thing would really help the main character cope with his problem. The artifact was called a box with evil rosaries. The guy did not understand how such a thing could help him, then artificial intelligence suggested using the function built into it. Thanks to the capabilities of the system, the guy could combine two artifacts, obtaining a more powerful and effective version of them. Thus, an item with potential could be found. It was customary to use a special pendant as the basis for enchanting. It is perfect for constant wear. The synthesis of the item happened faster than even the adaptation of Level Up alone, and the blue color illuminated everything around. To verify the effectiveness of the crafted item, the guy decided to wear it. After merging, the pendant began to bear the name Strengthening the Yin-Yang Spirit. As soon as he put the trinket on his neck, the guy's skin began to have a healthy tint. The evil aura disappeared and a blush appeared on his cheeks. There was only one nuance. Although the evil aura was gone, it was replaced by anger, a special force that also makes the guy stand out from the crowd, but is much more controllable. The young man had already cut his hair before, so doing it again was not difficult. It allowed him to look even better. Now he even has a chance of not living his life alone. Even though the main character's spiritual power level was quite low now, he now looked much better compared to what he had been. He decided to use reflection analysis on himself, but the spiritual eye only recognized the mirror, ignoring what it reflected. You could view information about your body and organism only using a special panel. It was called up as simply as the system menu. The guy's old name, his hobbies, and profession were written in the statistics. But from this information, the main character began to ask only more questions. The indicators indicated that he flew into space with Dr. Stone and was also a villager. Then he asked the system to tell him more about this. But it was impossible to share information. Almost all the data disappeared. Only information about the world was preserved, as well as the beginning of the path of the past personality. It all started with the guy being found unconscious in the forest and then settled in a small house. It was impossible to talk about anything more due to serious errors in the system. Then the young man asked why, if the system had previously been part of this person, it would not help him return to life. But the artificial intelligence could not answer this. The error that occurred last time did not occur with the main character. Most likely it was solved. As soon as the system said this, its mode was changed. The main character received a task lasting 1 year. He was required to receive 300 luck points. If successful, he would receive a reward, and if he failed, he would be punished. It was this error that the artificial intelligence mentioned earlier. The tasks are indeed provided by the system, but due to the error, their level is not stabilized. In other words, if the young man is unlucky, with his 5th level, he will have to complete a task that even the 100th or 1000th cannot complete. Due to an error, the AI was able to remember the cause of death of the previous owner. Its last quest was to kill Dulamao. But there is nothing to worry about because the main character managed to kill the devil. The previous owner of the body managed to survive with these crazy slots for 2 whole years. They were much more difficult than defending $500,000 in the challenge from Mr. Beast. The punishment for failure for the previous owner was the complete destruction of the soul and the accompanying complete death, so the devil could easily use his body. The main problem was that it was impossible to fix this bug, so when faced with an obstacle, it would have to be overcome, otherwise death would occur. Realizing once again that even in this new world for him he is the biggest loser, the main character fell into tilt, because if he had gotten the old man's body, everything would have been different. Even though the system tried to prove that this meant great luck, the young man understood that there were fewer advantages than disadvantages. What added fuel to the fire was the fact that the quest was only given a year to complete, and given how broken the system was, it could have taken a decade to complete. There was still hope, because they did not know what heights the owner of the body had achieved in the past. He could well have reached an incredible level of skill. Only after rewriting the owner of the body, the data on techniques and spiritual weapons was cleared, so you will have to comprehend spiritual arts from the very beginning. Faced with all this on his own, the guy began to wonder if only people with negative counters of good deeds could really be brought under control. The problem was that not a single entry talked about people who were able to rewrite someone's souls onto their own. The existence of the main character was the same bug as the system's tasks. Having tried to analyze the remnants of the former owner's power, the artificial intelligence decided to check the spiritual roots, but they were not found, which means that the main character faced a gloomy future, the same as the city Silent Hill. The only thing was that this meant that the guy couldn't even start practicing to reach the required level to receive luck points. The young man was also interested in whether there were any ways to obtain artificial spiritual roots if there was no trace left of the real ones. After searching a little, the artificial intelligence offered several options. All of them were not so effective since they were usually used only for temporary enhancement. There was also an option to prepare elixirs from demonic creatures inside the body. This spiritual root was very effective, but if there was a mistake, the result could be the opposite. To achieve his goal, the young man planned to use all the means available to him, because perhaps some of them would actually work. He decided to clarify why some of the spiritual roots could cause rejection. Then the system tried to simply explain, drawing a parallel with the poles of magnets. The guy wanted to know what to do if you don't have these roots at all. Then the artificial intelligence said that there are no people without spiritual principles. Then the young man asked why he didn't have them, but the cold voice of the system reminded him that now he was not even human. Even if the demonic root was the opposite of what was installed in the system, it was worth a try in any case. At least that's what the main character thought. Other people couldn't use demonic spirits, so the guy assumed that since he wasn't human, it should work. The young man spent 200 earned points on a book with the necessary spiritual art, and he immediately began to read it. Build a base in Clash of Clans was 10 times easier than understanding the principle of forming spiritual power from this book. For the first stage, demon pills were needed, but such low-quality goods, according to the system itself, were not sold in the system's shopping center. There was no particular choice. The guy decided to go to the nearest city to trade with the monks. He only had 600,000 low-quality spiritual stones, so the young man was worried. As soon as the system began cooperation with the previous owner, he went to the mountains and never came down, so the AI could not tell the way. Thinking about what awaits him ahead, the main character remembered the girls whom he rescued from the clutches of the devil. They were from the Ching Yun sect. Probably with their participation, everything will work out. The guy thinks it's a good idea to rely on others. Besides, the location of the sect was known to the system. Only the girl could tell that he was a hardened corpse. There were 3 main sects in this world, and the Ching Yun Clan was one of them. They practiced many techniques, and their pillars, demon hunters, could give many a head start with their breath. The main character asked his companion to be silent because he wouldn't remember anything that was said anyway, because he was thinking about the next step. Now, having learned about the importance of the sect that the elder sister and Xiaowen belonged to, it seemed normal to immediately declare one's affiliation with it. According to the system, the Heihuan sect is best suited for the protagonist, distinguished by their cultivation techniques that specialize in evil energy and anger. Next, we are taken to the possessions of the Ching Yun Clan. They are located on a mountain and are somewhat reminiscent of a village of residents from Minecraft in their location. The news about the evil cultivator quickly became public knowledge. Xiaowen decided not to miss her chance to score points, so she talked about her feat. The girl told everyone that it was her strength that allowed her to avoid victims, and as an argument, she suggested asking everything from her older sister, whom she also called a puppy. Sometime after the story, a dubious young man approached the group of girls and asked to tell them more about the hardened corpses. It was Master Dong Haokixian, is the eldest brother in the sect, so the girl was glad to see him in person. The young man's name was Wang Dan. Since the girl had already told the whole story, she would have to repeat it completely, but she was not at all against it. The older sister, who had just returned from a search expedition, did not allow us to continue the conversation. The brother turned to the girl and asked if everything was okay. Meeting an evil cultivator is not so easy, but usually such clashes are fraught with consequences. The eldest sister had urgent news, so she took Xiao's hand and took her aside to tell her about what happened in that cave. The elder brother was considered the most talented student of the sect. He was called a genius and a child of God. Perhaps having heard the story about the main character, envy awoke in him. The information about clearing the corpses was secret, so it was impossible to tell everyone in the sect. The elder sister asked the girl to keep their conversation secret from everyone. The beauty said that they had found the body of an evil cultivator. He was killed by the 3rd number, who had previously completely obeyed the commands of the devil. It was the main character who had a hand in this, and in addition, he also left a message for the girl so that she would not worry. Speaking of the note from the guy, the eldest sister straightened her hair too unusually, so Love Detective Xiao wanted to find out everything in person. Before the conversation could continue, the girls were interrupted by their sister, who wanted to convey a message. According to the cult member, an old friend came to visit her older sister, but she never had friends because she only trains and sits at home like a real hickey. This person also mentioned a note that the girl was supposed to find, but was not sure about it. As soon as she heard about this, the eldest sister immediately used her maximum speed to get to the entrance to the clan's territory. Going down to the gate, she really noticed a familiar figure. The main character stood and waved his hand, greeting the girl. But instead of joyful hugs and questions, "How did you stay alive?" they put a blade to his throat. This cold reception was in the style of an older sister. It was not easy to believe that this was really the main character, because previously he was a hardened corpse, and now he is an ordinary person. Then the guy explained that he used a special magical artifact so as not to become a guinea pig for the sect. This convinced the beauty, but since the place for talking was not suitable, she grabbed the guy by the hand and planned to fly away. The elder brother watched everything that was happening. He did not yet understand everything that was happening, but in general terms he was able to imagine the picture. From such an emergency flight, the guy turned into the canonical princess for a while, so a rainbow began to come out of him. It was hard to believe that the guy managed to escape unharmed after meeting such a dangerous opponent. Since a demon had previously been placed inside the girl, she was still worried and doubtful, not knowing what she should have done. The main character decided to intervene, saying that thanks to the girl's silence he remained alive, because if he had found out about the technology from below, he would have immediately sent himself to the game over sign, like in Pac-Man. But even though the girl helped the main character, he saved her in return, which means that none of them owe each other anything. The devil did not miss the opportunity to mock the girl, so she should not bother him with words and actions. It would be better for everyone, according to the main character. In turn, the older sister was worried about the young man's reaction. She believed that he was disappointed in her because she had shown such selfishness and abandoned the guy to certain death. Only the main character had no complaints at all. He was just as selfish and there was nothing so special about it. The guy was a good manipulator, even though in his past life he stopped at the student stage, but the detective books he read helped him manage his affairs now. His manipulations were necessary in order to get rid of the monster that had settled inside his older sister. He tried to convince the girl that she was not to blame. In the end, he boiled it down to the fact that as long as they are alive, there is always a chance, and also added a few more quotes in the spirit of Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. This really had an effect on the beauty. She doubted whether someone could remain positive after being abandoned. But even though the main character had no complaints about the situation itself, he really didn't like the way his girlfriend solved her problems. The guy always hoped for a miracle. He acted from the position that there was always some chance of success. Previously, the girl was the same. Her approach changed greatly after the death of a loved one. Now she simply could not look at the world with the same eyes. Noticing exactly how the girl perceived his words, the guy began to convince her not to take them too seriously. The desire to quickly give her soul to God did not suit the older sister at all. If she finally gave up, the main character promised to turn her into a hardened corpse. The girl was sure that if she ever got into such a serious situation again, her younger brother would appear again to save her from trouble. He doubted that he would be under great pressure because of such responsibility, and then he noticed exactly what the beauty called him. This decision was made because earlier in the cave, the main character called the girl his elder sister, so she decided to address him that way. She was also interested in whether the main character came only to talk, or whether he needed something else. Originally, the main character went on his journey to get the demon pill, which surprised the light cultivator a little. They have a market below, but the 5th level tablet that the young man talks about is as rare as the legendary Pokemon. The highest demons rush to the stars to become gods with its help. The money that the guy received after defeating the devil was only a small part of the amount that had to be paid for the 4th level demonic pill. He was amazed that the most terrible man in the world was so poor and unprepared. The older sister wondered why the guy needed her and whether it was really so important that he went to her from that cave. The guy couldn't talk about how this would determine whether he'd be alive in a year, so he just had to confirm his friend's experiences. It was very unusual to hear this question from the main character also, for the reason that he had recently defeated the most cunning and terrible dark cultivator. The rings he received from the devil were sure to contain at least something, but one of them contained a corpse prepared for hardening, and the second contained only a huge pile of rubbish. The guy remembered that initially they were in a cave. Perhaps some useful things remained there. The girl suggested checking it out. Only the main character didn't like flying. He wasn't too happy about this idea, but there was nowhere to go. The older sister decided to calm the guy down, because this time he would be standing during the flight, and the speed would not be so high. It was not possible for the main character to stand firmly on the sword, because of how narrow it was. Then the girl offered to hold on to her. Even if the situation was a little better now, the guy was still worried about how their flight would go. The system decided to award a few points for contact with a living person. Of course, the elder sister promised that everything would go smoothly, but the young man felt deceit in her words. This was confirmed during the first acceleration. Xiao watched the flight of her sister and the main character. She could not believe that the usually inaccessible Ice Empress took precisely the zombies along with her on the journey. The younger sister was furious because she didn't even manage to hug the girl, and the guy was holding her by the waist as if nothing had happened. All sorts of thoughts crept into the girl's head. The apogee of her suspicions was the theory that her sister loved to communicate closely with corpses. Getting to the right place was not a problem, but at first glance the cave was so small that it would be very difficult to hide something here. According to the elder sister, they had previously arrived here to conduct an investigation. They wanted to find out where the students of their sect were disappearing. Using his powers, the main character began to slowly explore the cave, but so far nothing could be found other than limestone and ordinary stone. The strange behavior of the main character attracted a lot of attention. The beauty continued to try to understand what exactly he was doing. However, there seemed to be something interesting ahead. The entrance to a weak space cave, the guy wasn't sure, so he had to check its value with the system. When a monk reaches the divine level, he often isolates some place from the main world in order to use it for his needs. To fix such places in the vast oceans of emptiness, it is necessary to use a special magical weapon. Its power should be comparable to the relics of the 7 deadly sins. It seems impossible to exist separately from the main world if the deity leaves or simply forgets about the kingdom hidden by itself. The slowly collapsing foundation allows a passage into this space to materialize somewhere in the world. This is exactly the door the main character managed to find. But before he could figure out how to profit from his find, the system caught the bug again and issued a second quest, despite the fact that the first one was not even in progress. In 3 years, the guy had to be inside and pass the test. A special key was given as a requisite for the execution. 100 highest spiritual stones were assigned as a reward, but even so, the guy was very indignant, because these untimely tasks infuriated him. The reaction of the main character seemed strange to the girl. He was talking to himself, and he seemed very tired of it. Then the main character shared that he managed to discover a cave at the stage of spiritual transformation, which a powerful monk had left long ago. Finding such a place was extremely difficult, so the girl could not understand how the guy managed to find the entrance, and understand that this was the right place. He didn't know whether to call this feature his gift or his curse, so he simply called it a feature of his abilities. The girl offered to inform the masters about their find, but the main character hastened to stop his older sister. For certain reasons, this could not be done, so he asked the beauty to wait a little. It was difficult for the young man to make his decision, because if he reported this place, he would have enough resources to buy the required amount of demonic pills. The only problem was that he had to go on the quest and complete the test first, which meant that information about her could not be allowed to be disclosed. The guy also couldn't explain why. He just said that if he didn't do it first, he would soon meet Ryuk in the world of the gods of death. The girl thought that the guy was hiding real strength, because entering the cave of the gods and then going through it completely was not possible at the 5th level of chi training. The guy was actually weak, but it was a must to stay alive, so he asked to be given some time. The friend was not against it, but she set one condition. Before going inside, the young man had to inform her about it. The main character did not care about such trifles at all, so he easily accepted his older sister's offer. The system intervened in the guy's plans. She suggested checking the cave for treasures. The devil could discover it and hide all the valuables there. Then the young man turned to the beauty and said that he was coming in right now, but she asked not to make any assumptions about the fact that she had a good character. In order to avoid getting into a difficult situation, the young man shared his idea. He simply wanted to explore the cave to find the devil's treasures there. Then the beauty suggested going on her own, because her cultivation level was much higher, so she was only slightly threatened by such an adventure. The young man decided to object, since in essence he is already a corpse, and everyone knows that what is dead cannot die. In extreme cases, it will be the same as in Pirates of the Caribbean. There really was logic in this, so the elder sister accepted the offer, but said that she would tell about the monk's cave if the guy was away for too long. The young man didn't know how to get inside, but the system told him that in his condition he just needed to go forward through the curtain, and then he would be in the right place. What he saw inside made him change his plan. The young man asked his older sister to go inside with him, because there was something to see there. Inside there was a mansion from the era of divinity. But this was not the most important thing. The guy asked his girlfriend to raise her head up and look at the ceiling. There was a formation holding back a huge number of souls of weak and average monks. They were talking. Some were screaming. According to the girl, many of these people belonged to a sect. Only one question remained: why the devil gathered them here? There is a protective formation around any sect, and so each of its participants is inscribed into its basis in order to be able to leave and enter. Through them, you can get inside. The old man's plan was the same as Aizen's plan in Bleach. He planned to turn a huge number of people into a key that could open the gate to their clan. But this was a plus for the main character, because inside this formation there were more than 100 third-level demonic pills. To be precise, there were 144 of them. Each such tablet consists of the soul of a skilled monk, but it was no longer possible to help them. The best thing the guys could do for these suffering souls was to break the barrier and free them, thus giving them a chance to undergo reincarnation. Having heard the plan, the young man did not hesitate for a second, because he planned to act despite the warnings of his friend, who explained that it was not so simple. It was too easy to give up, so the main character decided to at least try to destroy the formation. He wanted to do this with the help of demon pills. Even though it was easy to move around in a circle, according to the blonde, it was not possible to get the sphere out of the wall. Stubbornness and self-confidence forced the protagonist not to back down even at this stage, so he continued to spin the ball, hoping for change. To the surprise of the older sister, after some time of playing with this round version of the Rubik's Cube, the guy was still able to get the soul vessel out of the wall. He decided to complete his plan with the help of a superhero landing. He had not watched the Avengers for a long time, so he was unsure of his pose. The girl tried to find out how this was possible, but the main character only retold an advertisement for Oreo cookies, hoping that this was a good option. Soon the trap of souls was indeed broken. Even if the spirits no longer possessed their consciousness, many of them thanked the good guys for the help they provided. It was strange, but the elder sister suggested that because of their great strength, some shamans were able to retain a small part of their sanity, but the guy regretted that he killed the devil so easily. Even though the girl believed the guy, she decided just in case to clarify whether he was really level 5, because it looked like he had hidden power. The guy didn't understand why his sister was asking, but she asked for forgiveness because every person has the right to keep some secrets from others. The problem was that even if the guy wanted to explain to his girlfriend the principle of his strength, it would be extremely difficult to do so. The system suggested why the girl asked this question. Most likely it was not possible to destroy the seal before reaching the level of spirit awakening. It was strange to see the old man so weak. If he had so many demonic pills in his hands, the guy didn't even understand where so many of them came from. Despite their rarity, with the right amount of money they are easy to get, and the old man was an evil cultivator with a billion negative actions, so he simply killed the sellers. The pills were earned, maybe not entirely honestly, but leaving them here would be too wasteful. The guy asked his girlfriend to wait a little. He wanted to collect them. Only there was no need for this because now there was no barrier to limit the use of spiritual power, which means the girl could use a more effective method. It took less than a minute to remove all 144 pills, after which they began to fall like hail from the top of the heavenly cave. It was not easy to evade them despite their size. There were a lot of them. Each of the pills was an extremely valuable find. The only problem the main character faced was that cultivation with them would not be as effective. To break through, you need a demon elixir of at least level 4. According to the girl, it was impossible to melt the tablets with each other to increase efficiency, but the young man just had one interesting ability. True, the system tried to dissuade the main character because the effect would not be what he imagined, but the guy was too carried away because he thought that he had finally found a hole in pumping. The young man decided to use 2 stones of the 3rd level as raw materials. His ritual seemed a little strange to his elder sister, but he only asked for the opportunity to conduct a test. The fusion of 2 3rd-level elixirs cost 100 points, a small number, but if you synthesize them too often, then the entire supply will be spent just for this. The energy emanating from the main character was so strong that even a level 9 student like Big Sister couldn't be around without any consequences. He soon finished, but the result, as the system said, turned out to be somewhat different. Instead of the 4th level of the pill, the young man received an enhanced elixir of the 3rd level. Looking carefully at the main character, the girl could not move. This pill gave her a strange feeling of fear, as if she had seen a nightmare. The system gave the guy a hard time, because not only did he not listen to its advice, but he is also trying to argue with the main process, which knows better than anyone how all the functionality works. The appearance of the second GLaDOS did not bother the guy in any way. He was just trying to calculate how many points he could safely spend. Now he had a little more than 6,000. When he thought about the need to farm a little, his gaze turned to his older sister, who did not understand what was going on. But he had no right to do this to this girl. And besides, she helped him so much, the guy began to look for other options under the annoying recommendations of the system. Then he remembered the other pills that were stored in the Devil's Ring. One of them was a pill for sharply increasing stats, but the bonus weakened as the level increased. Its use could suggest how to achieve the desired result, even without the use of advanced alchemy. The guy's interest in illegal drugs began to gradually grow. He wanted to use the breakthrough pill to feel its effect. The sister tried to dissuade the protagonist, but he did not plan to feel it. She was against it, because the pills took away life expectancy in exchange for strength. But the young man was fine, but still a zombie, so like Brooke from the Straw Hat team, he had no time to spare. He planned to drink a few more. The power of the pill was truly amazing. Using just one made the main character an order of magnitude stronger. His aura became visible even to those who did not use a special detection technique. But this was just the beginning. To the girl's surprise, the spiritual energy continued to arrive slowly and painlessly. In any case, the eldest sister asked not to resort to such means anymore, just because the lifespan of a hardened corpse is not limited. The girlfriend's words had the opposite effect, so after a while the guy gulped a full set of explosive pills into his mouth. He understood a little about how the point system works, so he planned to make a little extra money on the girl. She knocked the bottle out of his hand. She didn't like this kind of reckless behavior. Even if the young man's body really wouldn't be harmed, it was still the wrong way to cultivate energy. Before moving on to the second stage of his upgrade plan, the young man, just in case, checked with the system to see if he was really immune to various poisons and similar effects. These pills had another negative effect. Their power was truly incredible, but at the same time they also caused resistance to other drugs. At one point, it may simply be impossible to restore the main character's body due to this stability. But this hardly frightened the main character. As soon as the beauty only blinked, more than 10 flasks with medicines and poisons were already absorbed by the young man. He lost consciousness, and as many as 878 points were awarded for his stupid act. The girl did not know what she should do next. The guy woke up only after a while. He was lying in the ground. He thought that while he was unconscious, he decided to take part in the new trend. The reality turned out to be more cruel, because due to the loss of consciousness of the main character, his older sister decided to bury the young man. He didn't really like this initiative, but the girl didn't know what she should do, so she wanted to bury the body. She was surprised to see the main character returning from the other world, because she thought that he had deliberately gone to a better place. But the guy denied such thoughts. The veins, arteries, and spiritual meridians gradually became larger until they exploded completely. And then the cycle began anew. The guy's body also experienced not the best metamorphoses. There were even traces on the main character's robe. He assumed that they were also the consequences of the medications he had taken. But in fact, the older sister was checking whether he was ready or still alive. The young man's body became much stronger due to the spiritual elixirs he took. Despite their illegality, they actually had a significant effect. Seeing how worried his friend was about him, the guy put his hand on the girl's head, promising never to resort to such rash decisions again. But since the older sister was a tsundere, she immediately after that sent the main character into a long flight, as if he were a pinball. Pretending that he was in pain was a bad idea, because the girl could get angry. All these drugs greatly strengthened all aspects of the main character. Only now such power-ups will not occur, because for a significant improvement, much rarer materials are needed. Coming out of the sealed space, the girl said not to perform such dangerous tricks in front of her anymore. The main character understood that he acted too selfishly and spontaneously, so he wanted to give his older sister the opportunity to let off steam while he himself synthesized spirit pills. In order not to waste time, the blonde began to restore spiritual energy. The guy didn't come out for a long time, so she was very worried, but then she remembered that he had recently died more than 100 times and then resurrected as if nothing had happened. What made me start to worry again was the flow of energy coming from the depths of the cave. The main character was definitely doing something amazing. The beauty hurried to go inside, but at that moment the boy decided to leave the divine cave and they crossed paths. The main character did not have time to stop, so they had to repeat the scene from the Titanic on the bow of the ship only during the fall. Hope was a motivating force for the guy, and now he hoped to receive his reward for perseverance, but it was not destined to build a utopia. The older sister had a pillow at hand. The elder sister was worried, because what the main character was doing really seemed strange. She decided to ask about it directly. All the guy tried to explain was that he was combining the third-level demon pills like he did earlier. As soon as one paid attention to the resulting elixir, the spiritual presence of the will of heaven began to be strongly felt, as if they were about to intervene in what was happening. The clouds above the mountain, inside of which the cave was located, began to take the shape of a funnel. The accumulation of spiritual particles along with lightning spoke eloquently of the troubles awaiting. Only the girl understood this. The pressure of heaven significantly changed their plans. The system insisted that the main character quickly hide the received elixir in the system storage, otherwise they would face a serious test for which the young man was not yet ready. As soon as the sphere of light was inside another space, the vortex began to quickly dissipate, and soon it seemed as if it had never existed at all. The young man didn't understand whether it should be like this, but each time the blonde had more and more questions. The elixir was prohibited by the law of heaven. Simply hiding it in a ring was not enough for the trace to be lost. So it was difficult to imagine what exactly happened to the pill. Despite the peculiarity of her younger brother, the girl planned to continue helping him. but he promised to tell him everything when the right moment came. Before they managed to finish the conversation, the girl's older brother decided to intervene, who was surprised by this coincidence. The girl did not expect to meet Wang Dan here, as well as sister Luo Qing. The blonde wanted to know what they were doing here. According to the young man, his sister became interested in studying the dark cultivators, so they decided to go to the last place where one of them was seen. But before Wang Dan could explain everything, his companion attacked the main character without warning anyone about it. The main character was ready for anything, but he really didn't want to fight the Jedi without any weapons, and besides, he couldn't believe that they were just attacking him like that. The older sister decided to stand up for her friend. With a precise blow, she knocked the blade out of the girl's hands, which, thanks to her technique, could cut anything. Having seen the girl's technique, the guy would hardly call her a 9th-level cultivator. The beauty's abilities were much more advanced. But more importantly, they needed to find out the motive for the attack, because the first time they met, Luo Qing called the main character a thief and a criminal. The older brother tried to resolve the conflict by saying that the girl might have misidentified herself and recognized the wrong person as her target. But she was sure who exactly she should kill for the sake of revenge, because before her death, the girl's sister left a photograph of the man who destroyed her honor. A moment later, the brown-haired woman took out a portrait of the main character from the ring. He looked exactly the same as he did at that moment. The main character understood that he was not involved in this, so giving up without a showdown was definitely not part of his plans. Wang Dan asked his sister who the main character was to her, in order to clarify whether this was really the right person. The blonde called the guy her acquaintance. Even if not even a day had passed since their first meeting, she was sure that he was not capable of such a thing. The girl's honesty in this situation was amazing, but the young man himself did not lie. He was asked about his brothers, but he said that he was alone in the family. The brown-haired man was confident that the best approach they could take was a court within the sect. He would be able to fairly examine the situation and find the culprits. But the older sister told the main character not to go anywhere, but he didn't mind because he was repeating his fate. He didn't really want the Pirate King from One Piece. One way or another, he was ready to cooperate. First of all, he asked to give him the image and also to answer a few questions. Luo Qing still didn't trust the protagonist, but her elder brother also ordered honest answers so that they would actually find the culprits. The young man was not going to agree to be arrested. It was clear from the image that it was too recent, which means his sister could not have made it. Wang Dan decided to intervene. He was interested in how exactly the main character determined this. Perhaps some kind of ink trail or imprint of spiritual energy remained. The guy asked for forgiveness. Perhaps he made a mistake because the man in the picture was so handsome that all attention was concentrated on the image. However, the young man did not plan to deviate from his words. He was ready to talk with the guys and even go to court if they honestly answered the questions posed to him. The guy wanted to find out exactly how the murder happened. Then Luo Qing said that the guy put her older sister to sleep. He was weaker than her, so he used some kind of medicine. Next, he asked what stage of development the victim was at. Then the brown-haired woman answered that her sister had managed to reach the level of laying the foundations. Then it was definitely not for him, because the guy uses drugs. Even if he reached the required level, he simply could not do it. The elder brother asked what level of skill the main character was at. Then he proudly said that he had managed to reach the 5th level. Qing did not want to deal with such an upstart, so she suggested killing the young man without trial so that he would no longer irritate them. Although the main character doubted that anything would come of it with his new acquaintances, even though he was at the 5th level, the monks who had reached the stage of laying the foundations could not oppose anything to him. Wang Dan was surprised to hear this and asked if he felt offended that his strength comparable to Saitama was belittled so much. And the guy was not averse to playing along. He told how much mental suffering had gripped him because of this mistake, so he demanded an immediate apology. The cunning brother invited the Taoist to prove that if he really had such power, it would be easy for him to get rid of suspicions in this way. A short time later, the silence hanging in the air forced Wang Dan to ask again whether the guy really had such power. But the young man was simply worried, because he could have hurt the brown-haired man. Such self-confidence began to infuriate the skillful student, and Luo Qi's sister began to freak out because the guy did not know his place and would now pay. The elder brother asked not to worry about it, because if he were injured due to lack of strength, he could only blame himself and not anyone else. As payment for moral damage, if he won, the young man wanted to receive as a reward the right to start dating a blonde. Suddenly, the older sister wanted to accompany the main character straight to the law enforcement agencies so that they could quickly deal with him. Realizing that such a reward was beyond his reach, the guy said that as a reward he needed the enemy's clothes, boots, ring, and motorcycle. But the young man was in no hurry to agree to such conditions, because this was a dispute between his relative and the Taoist, so there was no point in involving him. Then the young man said that he was not going to fight and would simply use the teleportation technique, after which they would never find him again. After such a turn of events, even Luo Qi wanted to ask her brother to intercede for her, because punishing the culprit was her main goal. The young man had no choice but to agree to the demands made. The elder sister was very worried about the main character, because despite his incredible strength, her brother was from a different category, but he tried to convince the beauty. As soon as the main character extended his hand with the text forward, the girl accepted the offer and sat down on a chair, planning to enjoy her favorite Pringles. The younger sister assumed that stupidity was contagious and was transmitted to the blonde, but Wang Dan noticed the strange gesture, and it bothered him. Before starting, the protagonist asked his opponent if he was planning a battle now, or if he wanted time to prepare. The elder brother did not like the neglect on the part of the upstart. He regretted that he had offered to make a bet without showing his true strength. The main character was glad to start early, because most of the effects that enhanced him lasted only a few hours, so he was ready to break. Their bet was that the guy could throw 3 punches, and the law enforcement representative could not get any damage without leaving one place. Luo Qing was skeptical about the strength of the main character, but seeing how many elixirs the guy drank at a time, the blonde meanwhile set up a barrier. Spiritual vibrations around the young man's fist were visible. This greatly surprised the skilled disciple, because this meant a sufficient level of strength to release ki. The blow hit the target, but its power was so great that the shockwave reflected from the block rushed towards the girls. Luo Qing was extremely amazed. However, instead of a knockout in the first round, the young man saw a greenish-colored barrier. According to their rules, this was a violation. The elder brother himself could not believe that someone so weak, possessing only the 5th level of spiritual power, could cause a reaction in the amulet. The elder sister was very indignant at the situation, because they had previously agreed not to use magical equipment, and amulets were included in this list. Wang Dan tried to justify himself. According to him, the amulet is activated automatically when there is a threat of harm to the life of the wearer. But even so, he planned to continue the battle, yet the guy said that he could compete even with Satoru Gojo, so breaking such a barrier should be a piece of cake. As they agreed, the main character only has 3 moves. An ordinary spiritual path foundation level master could break this talisman in 5 hits. The blonde wanted to intervene, but the young man was more than happy with everything. If he couldn't break through the barrier, then he just needed to hit even harder. The fact that he greatly underestimated the main character backfired on Wang Dan. The use of this protective amulet makes his body scream in pain and his stomach turn outward. As an apology for using the barrier, the guy demanded an extra move because he did not know that he would hit the defense. Only using such techniques is Wang Dan's trick. He didn't really like the boy's impudence, so the offer was refused. This did not upset the guy at all. He decided to simply hit 10 times harder to show his seriousness and prove his innocence. Despite doubts from the law enforcement official, the amount of concentrated energy was indeed out of bounds. The blow was so strong that no rock, paper, scissors gun came out. Hunter x Hunter was no match for this blow. The whole cave began to tremble. The blonde rejoiced at the devil's foresight, because if he had not strengthened this cave, it would have collapsed after such a strong blow. The elder brother's fear was not difficult to read. The protagonist's blow went right through, ending up a few centimeters from his opponent's chest. All you had to do was snap your fingers, and the completely broken barrier crumbled as if it had never existed. Luo Qing was very scared because she didn't know that they were planning to go against such a powerful monster. There was no doubt about the seriousness of the main character. After taking the blow with his defense, Wang Dan realized that the guy's blow was indeed 10 times stronger. The system offered to help the young man with power control, because in his current state he could easily kill a person just by touching him. But this was not required, because the guy deliberately dealt a serious blow, and now he was ready to continue the streak, ending the competition with his victory. Having seen the true power of the main character, Wang Dan did not really want to continue. Then the young man had to be reminded of their agreement. There was one more blow left. The elder brother continued to insist that the young man had already proven his innocence, and they could stop there. But they did not want to listen to him. Then, paying attention to the legs of the main character, the cunning guy noticed that they were trembling a little. It seemed to him that the young man was afraid of the strength and stamina of the representative. So he gladly agreed to take one more blow before their contest came to an end. In fact, the guy was trying to figure out how exactly to end the fight, because if a 10-fold blow had already broken through the shield, would Wang Dan be able to survive after receiving an even stronger blow? The reflections of the main character were taken by the older brother for doubts and fear, although in fact he was fighting in his head with demons offering to put 20 times the power into the blow. When the brunette finally decided, his blow was much faster than his opponent's reaction, so for Wang Dan it was like a dream. He simply switched off. The blow threw the representative outside the cave, and the elder sister hoped for the prudence of her friend, because she did not want someone like that from her sect to die just like that. When Luo Qing's sister reached the guy who had been hit, his appearance became similar to Golem as Yue, the only difference being his height. Next came the main character, who hoped to quickly receive his reward for the fight. In the person of Luo Qing, he appeared as the worst of the demons, and it cannot be said that just half a day ago he was one of the most worthy in his world. Next, we are transported to the territory of the sect's possessions. Xiao walked around the area, trying to understand whether her older sister had returned with the corpse. Soon she noticed them flying into the city, and Luo Qing's sister came out from around the corner. She had to carry her brother on her shoulders, because after the blow he never regained consciousness. The guys decided to celebrate their victory in one of the local establishments. The girl was sure that the main character had deliberately lured Wang Dan into a bet. But this time the guy had an excuse, because even though at first glance the student's behavior made him a peacemaker, his goals were actually not so positive. A lot could be explained if Wang Dan was in love with his older sister, because he definitely attacked out of jealousy, and not because he was looking for the culprit. However, the girl assured that this could not happen, because Wang Dan already had a fiancé, although the version of deliberately complicating life due to envy was the most likely. The young man's father died during one of the battles for the sect. Now the guy followed in the footsteps of his parent and became the head of the law enforcement agency. The girl was interested in what the main character thought about their sect, as well as about her specifically. The elder sister, in his opinion, definitely did not mean harm, because if she only cared about herself, she would have long ago called an elder or someone higher up to arrest him. But in the case of Wang Dan, everything was somewhat more complicated. Then the blonde suggested that the noble student liked the main character. The guy asked not to add problems to him because of strange thoughts, after which he took out the ring he received from the guy as a reward. The ring the guy won had previously belonged to the devil, and that could mean only so many different things. You didn't have to be Light Yagami to find the culprit. It was almost certain that the bad cultivator and Wang Dan knew each other well. Most likely they were accomplices. The girl was amazed because now the protagonist's decision to challenge his older brother to a duel with bets began to look completely different. If the young man noticed all this right away, then he is a real genius because the plan was really a success, and besides, they now have many useful artifacts and spiritual stones. The ring also contained something that put an end to Wang Dan's entire reputation. Taking out a scroll from the storage, the guy handed it to his friend so that she could study it. The young man decided not to talk about the contents right away, because the blonde might not believe what she heard. This scroll contained information about all the disciples of the Elder Sister sect, including those who were captured or killed to obtain the soul aspect. In other words, these two were planning something terrible. Probably someone from the top of the clan could also be involved in this. The question that the young man planned to ask sounded rude, but it was wrong to continue to ignore it. So he finally asked whether the investigation was carried out responsibly. But, unfortunately, the answer was negative. The investigation of the girl and her younger sister was the first. People began to notice the disappearance of the students only a few years later. The guy's assumption suggested that the entire law enforcement hall could be in cahoots with the evil cultivator. It was difficult to imagine who else took part in this evil intent, because as a reward, the devil could promise to tell the secret of the Cave of the Gods. The possibility of deception could not be ruled out. People could simply be fooled into believing that they were not doing anything wrong. After thinking for a while, the guy asked if those in the sect who suddenly became stronger or richer might have managed to break through after a long period of quiet. Among these was the dark horse Wang Dan. It seems that he still has a long time to learn to hide his tracks, but in the end it worked to their advantage. According to the blonde's words, the elder brother had just passed the mark of the beginning of building the foundation of spiritual development 4 years ago, and was now at the stage of perfection. Even though the guy was the arbiter of justice, the main character of this story, and just a good person, but what they got involved with could be more serious. The young man hoped to take the girl with him, then she, like Frieren, could become part of his Himmel squad. But she did not plan to leave the sect and wanted to find out the truth. Hearing this, the boy came up with a brilliant solution. He simply joined the sect on his own. It seems to me that this idea seemed good only to the main character himself, because the reaction of the older sister was more eloquent than 1,000 words. Then the girl reminded her friend that he had previously injured the head of the law enforcement hall, took his clothes, and was also using the items left behind by the dark cultivators. The main character didn't want this either, but earlier when he received his reward, he encountered unexpected trouble. While changing clothes, a quest window appeared. He was obliged to join the Ching Yun sect within 3 days, otherwise he would lose the ability to see. The main character also understood how unlikely it was to join this sect, but nothing could be done about it. It was not easy to join this clan also, because its popularity was incredibly high, and the masters were extremely skillful and strong. Even if you close your eyes to Wang Deng, there are not many chances. In addition, in the process, the truth about the true nature of the young man's powers may emerge. Then his fate will be even worse than Meisha from the anime Magic and Muscles. Even though the guy had already decided everything, the girl wanted to dissuade him from this idea. But her plan was not destined to come true, since the token received a call from the master. She was told to return to the main hall so they could investigate Wang Den's case. The protagonist wanted to keep her company. But, as in the case of joining the sect, the beauty had a different view on this situation, so with one deft blow she decided to knock him out. Before leaving, the blonde promised to return as soon as she found out the whole truth. If everything went well, then they would discuss the issue of joining again. To the girl's surprise, the boy stood up as if nothing had happened. He complained because, despite the ineffectiveness, the blows were quite painful. The older sister tried to knock out the main character several more times, but all her attempts ended the same way. The guy was not very happy with how he was being treated, even though he was a hardened corpse, but he felt the pain in full. The effect of all the elixirs had to wear off, so the beauty couldn't understand why she couldn't knock the guy out. The point at which the girl was aiming was responsible for the circulation of spiritual energy in the body. A strong impact on it usually led to loss of consciousness. The blonde would not be able to incapacitate the main character, so the young man suggested ending the feud and sitting down at the negotiating table. Besides, without him, she could simply be discredited. By leaving the young man, she will simply make it worse for herself because his sins will hang around her neck, and in addition, I will make her an accomplice who allowed the guy to escape. Spending half her life in prison was not part of the beauty's plans, even though she really liked the movie The Shawshank Redemption, so she accepted the offer. A serious test lay ahead, even more difficult than the test of his older brother, because he had to get to the main hall on a flying sword. Its shape was even narrower than the previous one, so he hoped for a continuation of the scenario that had occurred during the previous journey. In reality, the guy had to fly tied to the handle inside the sleeping bag. The girl assured that this method was much safer. Meanwhile, the argument continued in the hall. 2 masters in front of the sect leader were arguing which of their students was right and who was wrong in this situation. On one side was the elder of the law enforcement hall, Wang Jue, who was extremely dissatisfied with the state of his successor. With the other at the same time was elder Zhengyangfeng Wenhan, who did not believe what had happened, because his student's temperament was completely different. Old man Wen was sure that the blonde was studying the secret kingdom and could not be involved in such damage. A sect leader named Ching Yun tried to stop the quarrel. Qing Xuan Yuan Ying, because the girl was already approaching the main gate along with the main character. The landing was quite soft despite the guy's position, but the girl greeted the masters. Wang Ju reminded his opponent that, according to him, the student was studying texts, but the situation spoke differently. The master was also very surprised. On good terms, the girl shouldn't have shown up at all. Even if she received a call for a token, this would have made it much easier for Old Man Wen to solve the problem. Next, the main character came out of the bag. Then Luo Qing's sister pointed him out to the master, saying that it was he who was responsible for the death of her older sister. Without even thinking, as ferociously and quickly as Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, the man used a fire technique, intending to take the life of the main character. The sect leader took it upon himself to stop the hot-tempered old man. He hit the chair with his finger several times, after which Wang Jue completely froze. The wise master said that they cannot be sure of someone's guilt, which means that taking steps that lead to irreversible consequences is not within their capabilities. First of all, the leader wanted to hear the full story from the accusing party, so that they could at least understand what they had to work with. The no longer so self-confident young man was ready to begin his long and not very pleasant story. According to Luo Qing, it is the main character who is to blame for what happened to the girl's older sister, for which, in her opinion, he should be seriously punished. Wang Dan decided to lie, saying that the young man's victory in the battle was the result of using a high-level genjutsu, after which it also destroyed his younger sister's reputation. The blonde tried to intervene in the conversation, because she also witnessed what happened and knew that her older brother was deceiving the leader and elders. Then the guy began to manipulate the information, saying that his sister was also influenced by the dark forces of the protagonist, so she did not see the deception. The young man planned to use a video crystal as evidence because he managed to capture the terrible moment of bullying using technology.
The main character was ready to watch this video because he knew that he had not done anything like that. And besides, he had a trump card up his sleeve that no one had ever guessed about.
The recording that was played clearly showed how the young man committed his crime, but the main character himself only enjoyed the sight of 2 baked croissants. He was also amazed because the fake really looked realistic. If someone had shown him such a recording with the previous owner of the body, he would not have even doubted it. Master Wang Jue hoped that their leader would make the right decision and give the main character a serious punishment. Since they were a fair trial, the word was given to the young man, who could try to justify himself. But at that moment, there were practically no people left in the hall who were interested in the truth. The young man shared that he also recorded a video of everything that was happening, after which he took out from his pocket the same crystal as the one that his older brother had previously held. Without even allowing the recording to be shown, Luo Qing, Wang Dan, and their master began to dispute such a possibility, hoping to deal with everything quickly. The young man wanted to avoid slander in any way, so he would like everyone present to watch his recording. But before he could finish speaking, the young man was consumed by flames. The blonde was very worried about the young man, because for the 3rd time that day his body was undergoing serious tests that could kill an ordinary cultivation master. Wang Jue was confident that he had burned the main character to ashes, hoping to never see the culprit's face again. Figuring out exactly how things were was not part of the elder's plans, because his grandson Wang Deng had suffered greatly, and it was difficult for him to be out of bed. The elder sister's master did not agree with the decision, because taking upon himself the right to impose punishment in the presence of the leader, without even hearing the other side, is the same crime. However, it was too early to complain about this because the main character was still alive. He asked the girl not to worry, because he was completely fine. People around could not believe it, because Elder Wang Jue was among the top strongest. He could even defeat the Black Clover Magician King. But he did not kill some young man. The man was sure that the guy was dead, because even though his attack was simple, he struck it unexpectedly and put in no less than 80% of his maximum force. The 1080 recording was destroyed, so the video had to be shown in a lower resolution. The light of this crystal was extremely extensive. It reached right up to the ceiling and seemed to go somewhere further. The picture did not appear. Wang Dan began to convince everyone that the young man was simply mocking, planning to wear out all the nerves of the heads before his death. Suddenly, one of the sect members ran into the main hall, rushing to report to the leader about what had happened. A recording was broadcast above the building. It showed the main character taking his prize from the body of the loser Wang Dan, who was unconscious. He also planned to destroy his reputation. Everyone in the sect saw exactly how Wang Deng was defeated, and the followers who watched were extremely disappointed. This especially affected the young man's fiancée, who also saw this recording very well. Now she was not sure that their marriage could take place. The main character himself asked for forgiveness because he accidentally used the wrong crystal. Now he was planning to turn on the right recording. But to temporarily defeat the bad guy, no more was needed. It caused such moral damage that he simply lost consciousness. We are transported to the next morning. The trial regarding the sins of the main character has already ended. He was found innocent. Wang Dan woke up in his room. After the incident with the photo crystal, he never came to his senses, so he was taken to his private chambers. Even despite this, the elder brother's anger was at an incredible level. Like a berserker, he wanted to destroy everything that surrounded him, despite his serious condition. The sister was sorry that it all ended like this, but she could not help her brother otherwise. The girl could not tell about the outcome of the trial because she was afraid of the young man's reaction. Having gained strength, the girl said that the main character really was not bluffing, and their entire conspiracy was put on public display. In addition, right now the guy was taking the entrance exam. He wanted to join the sect, as Luo Qing herself believed, for his own safety. One of the conditions for the boy's entry was the transfer of all photographic stones in order to avoid further dissemination, even if the family's reputation was already damaged. Not except that he was humiliated by a Qi user who had not even reached the 10th stage. He planned to set up a setup again, but this time in full. He wanted to go to his grandfather to watch from the balcony how everything was happening. According to the information they had, there was no way the young man could pass the exam. The dissatisfaction of the former number 1, as well as the departure of Almighty's heroes from the world, caused many negative reactions. So few of the locals wanted to maintain contact with Van. Luo Qing tried to convince her brother that the story of the first crystal really happened by accident. The young man did not want to cause such harm to him or his reputation. On the way to the testing hall, they came across one of the cultivators of the sect. He wished the young man a speedy recovery, after which they could discuss the news. The arrogance of someone like an ordinary clan fighter greatly angered Wang Deng, but communicating with someone who considered himself a genius, and in the end lost to a newcomer, was a stupid waste of time. The young man himself did not even realize that the entire sect had seen the recording, so he, as before, planned to lead everyone and shut up those who did not plan to agree with him. Since his sister had not said anything about this earlier, he decided that she had done this on purpose, hoping to make her former best student an even bigger laughingstock. Despite his condition, the guy wanted to quickly get to the place to see at least one failure of the main character. At this moment, the testing hall was full of people, and the young man was still waiting for his turn to be eligible to attempt the exam. The guy still managed to get to his grandfather, but the elder did not understand why he left his chambers, because his injuries required a lot of rest to heal. Since the guy could not allow his main enemy to join the sect, he came to intervene at the right moment and change the outcome of their war. From the very beginning, Master Wang Jui wanted to kill the main character right away, without ceremony, but the elder sister's master stopped him from this rash act. If the guy manages to join the sect, then attacking him in the future will be an almost impossible task. Wang Jie himself was confident that he could prevent this. Despite no less hatred for the main character, the elder tried to dissuade his grandson from his decision, because it was not worth the price. The first stage of the exam began. The guy stood in front of a special stone. He, like the wish granter from Stalker, could tell everything about the person. By touching the stone, the young man will demonstrate to everyone the purpose for which he is joining the sect. It is impossible to hide it, so if his thoughts are not pure, now is the last opportunity to refuse. The main character couldn't say that he had received a task to join, and would become blind if he didn't join, so he was extremely tense. Based on the guy's reaction, the older sister began to guess that in fact he had another goal, not only the one that was known to her. The system asked the main character not to worry about anything. Because of a bug in its work, they found themselves in such a difficult situation, so they would help the young man. As soon as the boy touched the stone, at its very top, one word began to appear, which would determine whether he would pass further or not. Everyone was amazed when they saw the elder sister's name, Liu, on the stone Huayun. The young man received a huge number of points, but no one could understand what was happening. The guy was not delighted with the reason he saw. Of course, he didn't mind dating the beauty, but telling everyone about this would rather look like a setup rather than help from the system. The girls of the sect were amazed at what a romantic the main character was, and the guys did not accept the fact that they had a more worthy opponent. The elders watching the exam were amazed at the purity of the young man's thoughts. They liked such simple and self-confident youth. The older sister decided not to wait for the end of the test next to the guy and hurried away from the stone. She, like Marin Kitagawa from the anime, this porcelain doll fell in love, had not yet acknowledged her feelings. Master Lu did not want to give up the student so easily, but the other elders laughed because now there was a real contender for the girl. Wang Dan himself tried to prevent the main character from joining the sect. He turned to the elders with a request to change their mind while there was such an opportunity. People's attitude towards the bad guy was definitely not the best. Even if all his atrocities were not known to the public, there was enough information available. The focus of the event shifted to discussing Vaughn. Everyone was so carefree that they whispered right behind his back without worrying about the consequences. Elder Danfeng turned to her nephew, because even though everyone understood the guy's emotions, he should have overcome hatred and turned it into friendship. Wang tried to convince the masters that his request to refuse the main character to join was not his personal whim, but a request based on serious arguments. In front of everyone, he called the young man a hardened corpse, but it was not easy to believe it. Yet no one had previously met the living dead capable of holding a conversation. He called the attempt to slander the young man earlier a desire to maintain calm within the sect, not wanting to expose such a terrible truth to the public, but now he had no other choice. The guy's confidence made him offer more than he could afford, so he demanded that he be handed over to law enforcement for investigation. Liu decided to intervene. She recalled how Wang Dan had previously caused problems to the main character because of personal hostility, so this could happen again. If the elder brother had followed the path of writing rather than cultivation, he could easily have written a novel even more amazing than Game of Thrones. To prove his innocence, the guy had to demonstrate spiritual roots, which absolutely all people have, but are absent from the undead and demons. At that moment, the guy remembered his friend's younger sister, whom they had not seen since returning to the sect. But even the girl could not say anything about this because she had not met her, although this was strange because Xiao Wen was always looking for a meeting with Liu. The main character was able to find a thread through which Van received information that he was a hardened corpse, but he already had a solution to this problem. Despite the situation, the guy was ready to meet the prosecutor halfway and take the test to prove his innocence. He decided to earn some more points, so when Van asked him to show his essence, the young man took this request too literally, reminding everyone of yesterday's show. Master Wang Jue decided to intervene. He hurried to the main character, but not in order to attack him, although this was the first action that could be expected from him. Instead, he installed a special device that made it possible to determine spiritual roots or indicate their absence. The situation could seem really exciting because the information that the young man was a corpse was not false, but he did not just sit around all this time. Once again confirming his readiness, the guy suggested that the old man worry about his grandson because another defeat could cause demons inside him. It was better to save such jokes for stand-up, but the guy didn't like to make money from humor. His nobility in such matters could be compared with the nobility of the dragon warrior Po. The aura exuded by Wang Dan indicated that the jokes might soon become reality. He seriously wanted to kill the boy. Only the main character was not interested in the opinions of the losers, so he didn't even pay attention to the beaten bad guy. The young man's courage was worthless if at the last moment he still didn't want to show everyone that he had no spiritual root. So the head of the law enforcement hall challenged him. Realizing how difficult the situation was, Sister Lu tried to counter this by recalling the video recording, which showed the amazing potential of spiritual power. However, the accusing party continued to stand its ground, demanding to undergo a test to identify spiritual roots, otherwise they would find the guy guilty. The guy decided to calm down the adults with the help of his consent. He did not mind testing the origins of his power, even in front of everyone present, if it would benefit the sect. The dedication and courage of the protagonist resonated in the hearts of many clan followers, so they supported him. But everything changed when, as compensation for after successfully passing the test, the guy requested as many as 3 million low-quality spiritual shards. The elder understood that the confidence in his grandson's victory would not cover his expenses, because the man's monthly salary was only 10,000 spiritual stones. If the conditions are not accepted, then the test will take place anonymously, and the guy will report the results when he sees fit. Self-confidence led many villains to collapse. This time everything should have been the same, because Wang Jie didn't even measure up to one DC Comics villain. One of the elders was willing to act as a second to prevent any cheating on either side. All that was necessary to do to pass the spiritual root test was to grasp the hilt of the strange blade, and then wait for a while. Depending on the element and strength of the spiritual root, the result will be different. The stronger the ability, the higher and brighter the streak of light will be. The girl doubted that the guy should do something like that, and besides, she was not delighted with the main character's desire to earn extra money from everyone he met. The young man assured Liu that he knew exactly how to cope with this test, so there was no need to worry about him even this time. The moment of truth had come. Holding the hilt, the girl expected collapse, and the beaten Wang Jie was ready to rejoice, knowing the true race of her opponent. But to the surprise of everyone, the main character's aura indicated that he was Rainbow Dash. It included all the elements at once, but it was only the beginning of the whole show. It was difficult to believe what he saw, because the connection of all the elements eroded the spiritual root, mixing with it and turning into something else. The main character's power continued to influence the device, and the energy scale gradually filled up more and more. Each of the masters was amazed at the result, and other followers considered him a cheater. When the energy reached its climax, it began to burst out of this device, illuminating everything around with a bright snow-white color. The leader immediately noticed something very unusual in this aura. The selection of the 5 elements was a real miracle. Before, in the memory of the elders, I had never called upon all the elements at once. What was most striking was the reaction of the usually calm Liu. As soon as the anomalous power of the protagonist was discovered, a huge dome of energy was erected over the sect. This was necessary to prevent information leakage. The insulating layer was usually raised in cases of demonstration of the strength of people, at least at the level of a master. No one understood why it was activated during the acceptance of newcomers. This barrier not only kept everyone inside, but also made it much easier to cast mass spells, so the sect leader decided to erase everyone's memory. The main character, who was watching what was happening, could not understand whether he had done too well or, on the contrary, it was too bad, because no one was in a hurry to explain anything. Moreover, the matter was so serious that all the elders, including the sect leader, had to swear to keep this secret. The guy's strength was truly anomalous, because over many tens of thousands of years, only a few people were born with the same abilities as him. Each of them, without any exceptions, left a mark on the world of spiritual practices and energy, just like all Bankai owners in Bleach. These are legendary cultivators. Very soon, the main character found himself in the inner hall, where satisfied elderly people seated him on the throne of the leader of the organization and watched from the sidelines. It was an honor for them to meet such a person in their lifetime, so they planned to provide full support in training the main character. The Wang family once again began to muddy the waters, so the sect leader severely punished not only Wang Deng, but also his grandfather and father. If the young man's power was so special, he was worried that because of evil intent, the two might reveal the secret. But the old man asked him not to worry about it, because everyone's memory had been erased. Not only the representatives of the Wang family lost their memory of this fragment, but also all those who saw the test of the guy's spiritual roots, without exception. The old men also swore on their own hearts and souls, now if they reveal this secret to anyone, they will die instantly. The guy did not understand why such seriousness was needed. The leader asked the main character not to worry about such little things, because they themselves made this decision. Besides, everything would be fine if they did not spread. They were very interested in the question of whether anyone in the outside world knew about the young man's peculiarity, or whether he did not have time to tell anyone anything. Since at that moment the kind old people resembled all the monsters of Lovecraft, the young man could not restrain himself and told the truth that no one knew about it, not even himself. But even having received an accurate answer, the masters doubted and would like to verify this for themselves. This had the highest priority. Having completed this small friendly interrogation, the leader and his colleagues gave orders to all the employees, including the Wang family, who were waiting their turn. Lu entered the main hall. The leader was not very happy with such initiative, so he asked why the girl did not continue to wait until she was called. However, the situation was indeed extremely serious. She was not sure what exactly had happened, but junior sister Xiao Wen had changed a lot since their last meeting. So far, no one understood what exactly happened, but it was unusual to see Lu so anxious, so the experienced elders were wary. At the same time, on the streets, all the cultivators were just discussing how Wang Dan had once again lost the battle and was disgraced because of his pride and stupidity. Despite the fact that they quite clearly remembered what was happening, how it all ended and what the spiritual root of the main character was, no one could remember. At that time, Master Wang was passing by the guys along with his grandson. He did not like to hear such things about his family, but this was their payment. The Wang family's confusion and strange behavior could have been predicted, yet something strange had happened over the many years of their history. Spare the arrogant brat. He showed him several techniques he had seen from films with Jackie Chan, and then reminded him of the words with which he convinced the master. Wang Dan assured that the guy was indeed a hardened corpse, and he was also confident in the value of filling his storage ring. According to the grandson, Master Wang understood that the young man did not even understand what a difficult situation he had driven them into. He ordered him to never try to annoy the main character again. But the offended young man did not want to agree even with this. He was confident that he could get close to the imbecile boy. Seeing how stupid and vain he had raised the heir, the grandfather was extremely saddened by what he saw. He hoped for his grandson. But it turned out the other way around. The fact that if they tried to slander or attack the main character again, the Wang clan would become the target of the entire sect. Wang Deng was not interested. There really wasn't much point in talking to the upstart, so the old man simply walked away from him, preparing to hand out additional punishment. It was indeed not easy to believe in failure, since he used the Gu mantra to obtain data, a proven method of torture that could split anyone. Hearing this, Master Wang decided to play fire alchemist, so he used Roy Mustang's favorite technique. His magic was predisposed to fire. The cruel punishment, in the elder's opinion, was only a small part of what Wang Deng truly deserved. The smell of fried kebab attracted the attention of the main character. He was very hungry because breakfast before the exam was a long time ago. Yu came out of the nearest passage along with his grandson. The guy's condition was extremely serious, he could hardly speak now. The guy praised the elder's decision to turn his grandson into such a fragrant dish, because at least this way he wouldn't do anything stupid and cause problems for others. The man said that he only taught a good lesson to one arrogant cultivator who was unable to admit his mistake. He brought the agreed 3 million spiritual stones, as well as special compensation so that they would not hold a grudge against each other, added another 2 million on top, for a total of 5. Even though the former first place did not have much strength, he gathered them into a fist and asked for forgiveness for his actions and false accusations against the main character. The young man was willing to make concessions due to his sincerity. He asked senior sister Lu to temporarily hold his spiritual stones. However, she did not consider herself an assistant, so she sent the storage ring straight into the protagonist's mouth, hoping not to hear his voice again at that moment. The quarrel between the guys made everyone a little awkward, because even though these two had not known each other for long, it seemed as if they were Naruto and Sasuke, who got along well. The compensation part had indeed come to an end, but the blonde still had unresolved issues with Wang Dan regarding her sister. Not only the main character guessed about the young man's intervention, so soon Xiao Wan was brought inside, her condition was extremely serious. She was not able to move independently, and also did not distinguish speech or even make sounds. Her condition spoke of too careless work with the soul, which Mahito would not have appreciated. All the bad guys' dark secrets came out. As soon as Luo Qing went to the side of the protagonist and the elders, she told about everything that she had previously gone through. According to the head of the law enforcement agency himself, he mistook his younger brother for a living corpse precisely because of the words of this girl. Sister Luo Qing was ready to act as a witness to prove her elder brother's guilt because he deliberately tortured a sect member. The girl was no longer able to remain silent because Wang Dan's actions were not only terrible, but also led only to one unpleasant outcome. And her sister did not want to take part in this. She planned to tell about everything, and then accept any punishment for complicity, no matter what exactly it would be. His older brother's temper did not prevent him from preparing. He was sure that there was not a single direct piece of evidence left that would point to his guilt. Even so, the brown-haired girl planned to go to the elders in search of a fair punishment for herself and her brother. But before she could leave the room, her body began to hurt incredibly, and her general condition was only getting worse at a rapid pace. Only the young man was not so stupid, so he immediately figured out his younger sister's plan. She wanted to get a confession by forcing him to kill the witness. The main character did not count on this trick, so he prepared a backup option that would lead them to the same result. A little earlier, Luo Qing came to the young man and Liu to offer them her plan to capture the criminal. It was simple enough, so it should have worked. They really had no evidence against Wang Dan, which means that if the proceedings had begun, they would have lost this case, especially considering how fair their trial is when the guy's grandfather is in charge. Therefore, the girl developed another plan. She planned to sacrifice herself as atonement for her sins, forcing the bad guy to kill her using a special spell. Previously, this same skill was used to obtain information from Xiaowen. It was not particularly dangerous at a time, but multiple uses could even lead to death. The young man was well versed in frame-ups. He had previously worked with Dozai from the Armed Detective Agency, so he prepared everything necessary to frame his sister. At that moment, the girl realized that all this time she had not been a relative or dear person. Wang Dan had planned to shift the responsibility onto her from the very beginning. When the girl dies, the guy will be ready to be punished for his actions, so he considered it fair. The main character decided to intervene. He planned to obtain evidence in a slightly different way. For this, he wanted to heal Xiaowen. It was safe to say that the girl right in front of them would definitely not commit false testimony, so if she called Wang Dong guilty, so be it. The elder brother pretended that he also wanted to cure the younger sister Xiao, but everyone in the room knew very well what a terrible person he was. Lu could not understand what exactly her friend was planning to do, because her sister's spiritual power was completely absorbed by the goo worms, which are summoned by a special mantra. The use of this technique made it possible to slowly destroy the victim while the worm was alive inside. It was not possible to return to consciousness. Realizing how much trouble his grandson had made, Master Wang asked Sister Luo Qing to go with him to the law enforcement hall to begin an investigation. But the main character hastened to say that it is not necessary to resort to such a thing, because soon they will have another much more valuable witness. He suggested turning directly to younger sister Xiaowen for information, because no one knows the criminal by sight better than she. No one understood what exactly the guy would do, because Liu had already said that it is almost impossible to regain consciousness, of course, only if you are not a follower of Voldemort, because dark spells will help. The guy asked his girlfriend not to worry about anything, because this time he planned to do without any nonsense. He really had an idea. The treatment from the main character consisted of several stages. Thanks to the help of the system, he managed to receive special pills without unnecessary suspicion. The purchased pills looked like regular Mentos. Add cola and it would be a fun experiment. But he still hoped that the inhabitants of this world would fall for the deception. It was necessary to feed one tablet to the girl who had lost her soul, after which he planned to correct the situation by resorting to his technique. Since in fact the main character was still a noob, he did not even know one spell that he could use as a guide, so all the words that could rhyme were used. Any cultivator above the 5th level could understand that the mantra read was just an ordinary fake. Wang Den could not believe that someone was really capable of saying such nonsense. The performance ended at the moment when the guy touched Xiaowen's back with his hands, using the system he planned to pour spiritual power into her body. The system also didn't understand the joke, why the guy was dancing around the girl and saying strange, unrelated words. But even though she did not understand the protagonist's motive, she did not refuse to help him heal his younger sister. The young man's spiritual energy was much stronger. The elder could not believe what he saw. The vital forces were actually returning to the body of the younger sister, arriving slowly but steadily. Wang Dan was the most worried, because if the girl really returned to consciousness, there would be no way to avoid responsibility. The sect leader, as well as other leaders, observed the treatment methods of the protagonist. They had never seen such practices, but this was not surprising. In their opinion, the mastery of the protagonist was something unattainable, understandable only to those who have a chi development potential comparable to him. The movements, magic formulas, and pills were all extremely mysterious to the sect masters. They planned to continue observing to find options to enhance their own capabilities. Although the guy's technique and approach were unusual and effective, his level of spiritual energy development was extremely low. He had a lot to learn. After all, his practices, judging by their appearance, caused a lot of damage to his body. Perhaps he simply lacks the experience to more accurately control the aura. In fact, the main character realized that he was being watched, so he asked the system to help pretend that helping Xiaowen really took a lot of effort. Soon the girl's eyes finally opened. She did not expect that upon awakening she would find herself in the main hall. It seems that the memory of what happened earlier did not come immediately. Recovery from the Gu mantra was an extremely unusual phenomenon. Usually the person died or could no longer lead a normal life. Liu was very happy. Wang Dan already saw his future. Even if his abilities did not reach the level of Tatsumaki from One Punch Man, he was trying to find an option on how to still avoid responsibility. The same insects were on the younger sister's ear. The older one, Liu, wanted to get rid of them with the help of spiritual powers, but this had to be done carefully. The main character himself does not stand on ceremony, trying to pull this centipede out of his friend's ear with the help of an ordinary hand. For such treatment, the older sister was ready to turn the boy into a chop. He didn't know yet. But it was worth running, because the girl wouldn't be able to restrain her anger for long.